Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. I'm excited for this one because I have always been a fan of Whistlepig. So I've got like Whistlepig 18 up there, the 12 and the 10 have always been staples on my shelf. But as far as rye whiskey goes, I've always been a big fan of Whistlepig. And one of our viewers, Mike, sent me a sample, 2-ounce sample, of Boss Hog 10, The Commandments. And I gotta tell you, when I read up on this bottle, I was immediately interested. Immediately, because it's well-aged, straight rye whiskey, made in Canada like their 18-year is, and all their early distillate was Canadian as well. They've started to do some of their own distillate as well, which is great. This is not that. But what they do is they take this old rye whiskey and then they finish it in, they do 2 different finishes on this. The first barrel that they finish it in is a barrel that is left over from their own like unorthodox experimental spirit that they're doing with rye grain and whey. And then the barrel's infused with aromatic resins and they liken it to frankincense and myrrh. Now that's the first barrel. Then they finish it again in craft mead barrels. I think mead is delicious. You know, I love a good mead, a good cherry mead especially, super yummy. And they're very popular here in West Michigan. There's a number of places around here that do their own meads. Super yummy. So now we're finishing it in that barrel next. So I'm gonna crack this open and pour it. Now, thank you so much, Mike, for sharing this with me because this bottle is not cheap at all. The Boss Hog bottles, it varies bottle to bottle, but they tend to retail, well, MSRP tends to be somewhere around like 500 bucks. You're probably not gonna get this one for any less than 600 bucks. And you'll even see it listed for $1,000, sometimes more, depending on what website or secondary market you're looking at. So this is not a small investment. Getting it for close to MSRP is a hassle. It means you really got to be doing your hunting and your homework. Otherwise, you're going to be paying a significant markup to get this bottle on your shelf. So I'm going to let you know today if this stuff is good enough to warrant all that hype, all that exclusivity, all that hunting, all that money. So each bottle of this is, single barrel offering and at barrel proof, which means it's going to be around that 106 proof point area, maybe a little above, maybe a little below. Oh my, this nose is something else. Very first things that come to mind are honey, thick drips of honey. I think of a white Chardonnay wine. Definitely honey and dry white wine on the nose. That's beautiful. And then this like really aromatic, almost like a sandalwood kind of a vibe on this too on the nose. Yeah, what an incredible nose. I'm anxious to dive into this. Cheers. Oh man, that is a honey bomb right there. That is a honey bomb. Whew! And you get this like floral aromatic heat underneath it too. It's got some spice to it. I think of like clove. A little bit of like apple in there too, a bright yellow fruit. Very rich, is a very rich drink. Almost syrupy in that regard. It coats like everything in here too. It's like you like peeled a fresh, crispy, like a Honeycrisp apple. And you took that peel and just maybe dipped it in some honey and started chewing on it. Because you got the dryness right from the peel, from the skin of the fruit. You got the sweet juiciness of the apple flesh that's just lining the inside of it. And then you get a ton of honey in there too. And it is thick. That right there is an experience. They almost used the rye whiskey itself as almost like a blank canvas for them to paint on and to do something really different. And so in that regard, it's really cool. It's really inventive. There's nothing quite like it. But all the stuff they did to the rye, those are the things that are front and center. The rye itself, maybe not so much. I'm not getting a lot of like mature rye notes off of this. The whiskey itself really is just there to be the delivery method for these other flavors that they were trying to reach into, which isn't necessarily a knock on it, more an observation so you know what to expect. The mead, the aromatic infusion of the first barrel, those are the things that are going to be coming through front and center. The more it sits on my palate, eventually that sort of rye spice and the tannic oak, they do kind of sit in the back of your palate there a little bit. So it's not like they're non-existent, you know what I mean? But all in all, if that sounds good to you, apple, floral, and honey, then you're probably really gonna like this. This is the kind of thing that I would say pay for a pour somewhere. You know, find a good bourbon bar, a good whiskey bar that has a bottle of it, pay for a pour, and try and figure out if this is your jam before you go dropping hundreds, maybe even $1,000 on it. Personally, for me and my palate, I think this is delicious. I'm very happy to have tried it. One of the things I have to give them high marks on though is definitely the branding. The bottle itself looks incredible, and the stopper on the top is this like a pig holding like a copy of the 10 Commandments and like a robe. It looks fantastic. I'm totally here for it. And I will note that this comes from barrel number 78, and this one is 105.3 proof. I will probably slowly nurse this for the next hour, would be my guess. Not because it packs a big punch in terms of alcohol, but because it is so rich and has so much flavor. We're gonna savor it. So if I'm gonna give this a rating on my scale, per my scale that I use, I tend to give a lot of emphasis to innovation, right? If somebody is doing something really interesting and they did it well, I tend to weigh that pretty heavily in a score. And so just on innovation perks alone, this bottle is going to get a lot of value, I think, because there's just nothing quite like it. It's very unique in that capacity. On top of that, it's delicious. It's full of flavor. It's quite yummy. If that's your jam, you're going to love it. So I think that I'm going to land on an 8.7 for the Boss Hog 10, The Commandments. Big shout out again to Mike. Thank you so much for sending me that sample. That means a lot to me because that's a really special bottle. The fact that you would be willing to share that with me is quite humbling. So thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate you. As well as anybody and everybody who has sent me bottles, samples from stuff from their bars, from their local distilleries that they love. That stuff is so cool to me, and I'm so excited to be able to share in your passions, your palates as well, and be able to cover that stuff here on the channel. So thank you so much, each and every one of you who shows support here. If you're new to the channel, feel free to drop a sub and come by sometime. We'd love to see you around more. Also, feel free to leave a like in the video, as that's the best free way to support the content here on YouTube. Big shout out to my Patreon supporters. Really appreciate your support, as that is what funds these bottles that I get to buy, pick up, review here on the channel. So thanks for keeping the content flowing. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. Be warm and well fed, and hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.